is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business Europe, live from CGTN in London. I'm Jamie Owen.
And I'm Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Wildfires continue to rage across southern Europe. Authorities order more evacuations from the Greek capital, Athens.
And the EU says the Mediterranean will continue to be a wildfire hotspot as it records another scorching July, one of the continent's hottest.
America's drive towards electric. President Biden says half of US vehicles will be net zero by 2030.
And the Belarusian sprinter who refused orders to fly home early from the Olympics denies that she betrayed her country. Southern Europe is still battling the flames after days of destruction. Greek authorities have ordered more evacuations as wildfires continue to rage.
There are over 100 blazes across the country, threatening the capital, Athens, and the birthplace of the Olympics. Evangelos Ipsas reports.
Fires continue to rage in many parts of Greece for the third straight day. Here on the island of Evia, fires were fueled by new blazes overnight, despite the efforts of hundreds of firefighters to bring them under control. Thousands of hectares of land have been burned and continue to burn, while houses and properties have also been ravaged by the flames. In Evia, around 12 villages in the island's north had to be evacuated in the early hours of Thursday as a fire that started earlier this week near the seaside village of Limni broke up into separate fronts, spreading both further inland and down the coast. Hundreds of firefighters, volunteers, and army personnel with trucks have been mobilized to try to bring the fires under control before they threaten more villages in the area. The worst damage so far appears to be concentrated in the seaside village of Rovies, where dozens of residents and holidaymakers had to be evacuated by sea on Wednesday. In the meantime, help arrived on Thursday from France, Sweden, and Cyprus as the authorities announced new measures to battle the flames. But locals and volunteers on the scene here are angry. They believe Greek authorities did not act fast enough or deploy adequate firefighting planes and helicopters. In the last 24 hours, the fire brigade has tackled around 100 wildfires, including one in ancient Olympia, site of the original Olympic Games, which currently is out of danger. But here on the island of Evia, the battle continues as winds pick up and temperatures remain around 40 degrees Celsius as the country suffers from the latest extreme weather event to hit southern Europe. Evangelos Ipsas from Evia, Greece for CGTN.
And you're now watching live pictures here on CGTN of the outskirts of Athens, which, as you can see, is well alight. This is forestry blazing. Just a few seconds ago, before we came to the live pictures, there were small explosions, which perhaps are domestic oil or gas tanks in gardens or perhaps vehicles catching light. But those are the latest pictures live from the outskirts of Athens in Greece.
Elsewhere in southern Europe, authorities in Italy are still on high alert after days of devastating fires in the centre and south of the country.
Residents along the Adriatic coast were forced to flee as the fires reached the beaches and dozens of people were taken to hospital. Hermione Kitson reports.
The green heart of the coastal city is now blanketed in grey ash, smoke still smouldering from an unprecedented disaster. Surveying the damage, the mayor says it's a sad moment in Pescara's history.
To see it destroyed, a natural reserve like this, is a tragedy. It makes you want to cry.
The alarm was raised on Sunday afternoon.
Stanno bruciando gli ombrelloni, stanno bruciando le case.
Wildfires, which started in the hills, were fanned by strong winds and 43-degree temperatures to reach the beach and then nearby nature reserve.
Seriously, there were apocalyptic scenes of hundreds of people running from their homes crying. Dozens of people were taken to hospital.
Marco Schiavone and Giorgio Giudice were on the front line and have been hailed as heroes.
We evacuated the beach and then the park before we raced to evacuate buildings close by, including a convent where many nuns were trapped.
We ran inside and carried many of them who were in wheelchairs down the stairs to safety.
Amazingly, no lives were lost.
I think it would have been an even greater disaster if we weren't able to warn people. There would have been many deaths.
The fire here in Pescara was one of dozens across the state that caused significant damage, and authorities believe many of them were deliberately lit.
Investigations are continuing, but the blame could lay in the hands of arsonists who must be brought to justice because this is an act of terrorism.
Wildfires have also caused havoc on the popular holiday islands of Sardinia and Sicily. Thousands of hectares of land have been destroyed, and authorities warn that the danger isn't over yet.
We are fearful that it could happen again because it is still very hot. We hope the strong winds don't return. In the meantime, we mourn the loss of a crucial part of our city.
Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Pescara.
Last month was Europe's second hottest July on record. That's according to a new report released by EU scientists. It comes as pressure mounts on governments to do more to tackle the continent's climate crisis. Let's talk now to our correspondent Tony Waterman in Brussels. So, Tony, what came out of this report?
Well, Robin, this is a monthly report from the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service, but it really takes on significance this time around because as we're looking at this report, as you've been talking about, parts of Europe are burning, other places are experiencing these severe heat waves. And this report showed that July was 1.4 degrees Celsius warmer than average in Europe. Parts of the continent like Finland, Northern Ireland, places that aren't exactly the tropics, were smoldering with record-breaking temperatures. But it wasn't just Europe. The U.S. was about a degree warmer than average. Also Africa, Asia, parts of China also experiencing unusually warm temperatures last month. Now, scientists are very hesitant to link these rising temperatures directly with any singular weather event, but happening parallel with these blistering temperatures that we saw last month were a series of catastrophic events. We saw severe flooding in Germany, Belgium, China. Hundreds of people died. Entire communities were completely swept away. We had wildfires, prolonged drought, a continued melting of permafrost. And scientists from Copernicus say that July is usually the hottest month of the year. But here we are a week into August, and there is very little reprieve. Greece is facing another heat wave. Athens saw record temperatures earlier this week. We know that there are those wildfires which are raging on the outskirts of the city, but also in Italy and Turkey. Thousands of people have been evacuated as the fire creeps very close to where they are living. And scientists saying that this is perhaps just a glimpse into what the future could hold if these temperatures aren't reined in.
And Tony, this is another issue that global leaders are going to have to deal with when they meet later this year.
Yeah, the global leaders are going to be meeting in Glasgow, Scotland at the end of October. This is for the COP26 climate talks. And a lot of these leaders have already made very ambitious climate targets. They announced a new series of them earlier in the spring at an event that was held by U.S. President Joe Biden. The EU wants to slash global greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. China wants to be carbon neutral by 2060. The U.S., the Biden administration, expected to sign an executive order later today when it comes to electric vehicles. But activists say this is just not enough. This is not even moving the needle. They need to do much, much more. So when these leaders gather in Glasgow, there is very much the expectation from a lot of people that they need to make even more ambitious climate targets. And it's really these leaders that are going to be feeling the heat this fall.
Tony Waterman, thank you.
So just how bad are these fires in Europe this summer? Mark Parrington is a senior scientist at the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service. I asked him to put the wildfires in a wider context.
Well, we're basically using satellite measurements from space to measure the temperature and the intensity of these fires. So we don't have a very long time series. It goes back about 20 years, covers the last 2 decades. And we have daily information, so we can provide some context for what's currently happening in relation to what we've seen in the past 20 years. The day-to-day variability in the intensity of these fires around the Eastern Mediterranean, Southeast Europe, are currently at a level that's well above what we've seen in terms of the average of the previous years of data that we have.
I know the south of Europe isn't the only area that you've been looking at over recent months. We've also been looking at the Siberian fires too, so this isn't the only region that's affected, is it?
No, that's right. And in Siberia, in central parts of Siberia, really massive area of wildfires that have been burning at a high level of intensity since the middle of June. And also in North America, in Western Canada, Central Canada, California, the Pacific Northwest. Since the end of June, beginning of July, we've seen, again, really huge wildfires and forest fires, which have been burning and producing lots of smoke and pollution that's traveling thousands of kilometers downwind.
What are the most significant factors that trigger high fire risk, and how are they usually monitored?
So one of the common features that we're seeing for the fires in the Mediterranean, in Siberia, and North America is they're occurring in regions which have been experiencing heat wave conditions, also very dry and drought conditions. What that means for the vegetation that's burning is that it has a high flammability. That is to say, it's ready to catch fire when there's an ignition. So the difficult thing is understanding the ignition and measuring or predicting the ignition. But the dryness and the heat means that the risk of fire is very high, so that when there is an ignition, that we're able to then witness fires that are burning in the scale that we're seeing.
And as we look at these awful pictures of Turkey and Greece and Italy on fire, I wonder what the environmental impact is of all of that smoke and ash going into the atmosphere in such huge volumes.
Exactly. There's the direct implication or the direct impact on the atmosphere is in terms of severely degraded air quality, which is, has serious risks for human health, particularly in large population centers that may be directly downwind of the fires. And there are studies over many years which also show that as well as the air quality, ash and smoke from fires can degrade water quality, so drinking water could be affected. But yeah, there's a number of factors that this has in terms of the environmental consequences.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, we're in Germany next for some insight into how Europe's powerhouse economy is navigating out of the pandemic gloom.
Search CGTN Europe wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe to the Agenda podcast. The Agenda with me, Stephen Cole, always gets to the heart of the story. Just subscribe today and listen now.
Covering the world from 4 continents. A new horizon. Teams in Beijing, Washington, D.C., Nairobi, and London. Who connect, interact, and inquire. To bring you the stories that matter to all. The Link, only on CGTN. Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
The world has changed under the pressure of the pandemic. For many of us, life is returning to some kind of normal. as we're adapting to changes in all of our lives, let Global Business Europe be your guide to the new normal. Join us weekdays on CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe. And quick reminder, CGTN is available to watch for free on all of the major digital platforms, on Smart TV or online at Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube, Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app.
The US president wants Americans to buy electric. He's about to set a new national target for EVs to make up half of all vehicle sales by 2030. His executive order is thought to have the backing of major automakers like General Motors and Ford. Let's talk to our correspondent, Sarah Walton, who is in New York. So, Sarah, how is Joe Biden planning to do it?
Well, it looks like he's going for a little bit of a two-pronged attack on this. Firstly, he is expected to strengthen auto mileage standards. So that's the miles per gallon that cars are expected to be able to achieve. He wants to put them back to where they were under President Barack Obama before they were relaxed by Donald Trump. As well as that, it's thought he will then set a far more strict set of guidelines on pollution or emissions from cars, not just for passenger vehicles, but also for trucks and lorries. Now, as you were mentioning, he's got the backing of some of the biggest car makers here in the US, so General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, which is the new name for Fiat Chrysler, and he's also got the backing of the United Auto Workers Union. Now, Joe Biden can't mandate that 50% of new car sales are electric vehicles. All he can do really is try to create the setting where that can happen. And it's not all just stick that he's using. There is some carrot involved here. So, some measures to try and make buying an electric vehicle more appealing to consumers in the US. So, for example, the infrastructure bill that's going through Congress at the moment, that would contain money to build more electric car charging points across the United States in the years ahead.
And let's move to the US markets now. Good earnings results for Moderna and more information from them on the effectiveness of its COVID-19 vaccine.
Absolutely. Moderna beating expectations for the second quarter. Its earnings came in at about $6.46 a share, which is about 40 cents more than was expected. Sales also about $120 million more than had been predicted, coming in at $4.4 billion. Now, despite that, the share price for the company was actually down about 3% in pre-market trading. Did recover a little bit, got up to about 8%, but it's fallen again. Actually, a short time ago, it was down 4% on the day. And that comes despite the fact that we got this update from Moderna on the effectiveness of its COVID-19 vaccine. The company saying it is still 92% effective at protecting people from COVID-19 4 months after you've had their jabs. It does say, though, that it's likely that people are going to need a booster shot before the winter time because of variants of COVID-19, particularly the Delta variant, which is driving the spike in new cases here in the US at the moment. Moderna, though, saying that its booster shots that it's working on showing a good antibody response to variants.
And we've had some new figures showing the US trade deficit hit a record level in June. What's driving that?
Yeah, that's right. The trade deficit expanded by 6.7% from May to June to a seasonally adjusted $75.5 billion. Imports also saw a record monthly increase. They were up just over 2% to $283 billion. The Commerce Department saying that that was driven by an increase of purchases of industrial supplies like iron and steel mill products. Now, those figures were much better than expected, and analysts saying that's because of an improving economic situation for many people in the US as COVID-19 restrictions have been lifted, and that is driving demand for foreign-made goods here in the US. Interestingly, though, demand for US exports not increasing at anything like the same rate. That went up by just over half a percent between May and June, which analysts are pointing to, a slower economic recovery in other parts of the world.
Sarah, good to talk to you. Sarah Walton there in New York.
Well, this side of the pond, Europe's biggest economy, is a good barometer of the continent's robustness at this stage of the pandemic. Some of the most recognizable companies in Germany have been updating the markets. The industrial giant Siemens has seen orders boom and is raising its outlook for the year, despite losses in its green energy division. But the airline Lufthansa is continuing to struggle with second quarter losses of over $1 billion. There was better than expected news, though, for the sportswear brand Adidas. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Ryan Thompson, who's outside the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. Ryan, Lufthansa still in the red, but its hub in Frankfurt seems busy, almost like pre-pandemic times. What's the outlook for the next quarter?
That's right, Jamie. When you look at the books, very much still in the red, but this time around, a far narrower loss for the company. And interesting to come out of that second quarter report is that for the first time since the start of the pandemic, well, the free cash flow is actually in the positive territory. Why is that, you ask? Well, that cost cutting that they have talked about for months and months now in order to slim down the Lufthansa Group operations, well, it's happened a lot faster than they had actually expected. They've really slashed those routes, the staffing, and even sold off some of the planes and some of the assets that they have under their umbrella, because as the Lufthansa chief executives have said, this is the path to profitability, and they might be just around the corner from finally getting to that point. Passenger numbers are returning in droves. If you go to the Frankfurt hub or the Munich hub, you will see that the security queues are long again. It is no longer a breeze flying like it was during those winter months when a few people were taking to the skies. 7 million passengers in quarter two of this year. That is up 300% from the same time last year. They're also seeing a huge increase in bookings online as people have just a little bit more confidence that they will be able to fly in the next few months and that they won't face issues related to coronavirus restrictions or hesitancy lockdowns or things like that. And the bookings, I should say here, Jamie, are so significant that normally when you think about a Boeing 747 jet, you think this is the type of plane that's going to fly me halfway around the world, so maybe Frankfurt to Shanghai. Well, in the case of Lufthansa, they are seeing such strong bookings here in Europe that they are using a Boeing 747 to shuttle passengers from their hub here in Frankfurt to the island of Majorca.
Okay, well, let's talk about Siemens. A bit of a mixed picture there. What did the executives have to say?
Yeah, in the words of the chief executive, it is extremely annoying because they have had to revise the profit forecast for the rest of the year because of one reason, and that is their electro wind turbine division, which has just really sucked some of the power out of the company's really big drive that they've had so far this year. If you remember, they sold and spun off this division about a year ago to become a Spanish company. That's where they would produce the primary amount of these wind turbines and really be able to reap the benefits of that. However, now they find themselves in a situation where that company is struggling. Siemens is really suffering because of that financially and not being able to reap any of the benefits that they thought they would. But at the same time, they have no control and no real way to turn this around anytime soon.
Good news for Adidas and Bayer, who both say they're on the other side of a pandemic slump. What about that?
Yes, the increase in consumer spending is helping everyone. It's no secret that when you walk around London or Frankfurt or Paris, any of these European hubs, we can see people out and about. And in the case of Bayer and in the case of Adidas, they are seeing the benefits of that. So let's just talk about Bayer for a second here, right? We are seeing people out and about. They are socializing. They are getting a common cold, perhaps like the one that I'm slowly keeping underneath me here. And people are getting sick again. People are hurting themselves again. They're buying medical products. They're buying over-the-counter products. That is very good for Bayer because they were not seeing that during the heart of the pandemic, especially these winter months when people were staying at home and, in other words, staying safe. they are also catching colds, catching infections that are not COVID-19, and that means that they are, some cases, getting prescription medicines as well, so that's super good for them. In the case of Adidas, the sportswear brand, well, people are also out doing sport or out at the restaurant. They're seeing their friends, cool trainers or cool jacket, and so that's really driving them to head online or head to the shop and pick up those products as well. So all good news for those two brands there.
Ryan Thompson in Frankfurt, thank you very much. The Mexican government is suing U.S. gun manufacturers in the first legal action of its kind. The lawsuit filed in Boston alleges companies including Smith & Wesson, Colt and Glock have fueled Mexico's drug-related violence through reckless business practices. The lawsuit alleges the manufacturers knew they were contributing to illegal arms trafficking. Mexico is seeking $10 billion in compensation.
Venezuela will slash 6 zeros off its inflation-battered currency, the bolivar, in order to make it easier to use. The country's central bank says the change will take effect on the 1st of October with the distribution of new currency notes. The once wealthy oil producer is in its 8th year of recession and 4th year of hyperinflation.
COVID-related delays in the turnaround of shipping containers has prompted shipping prices from China and the United States to hit fresh highs. A 40-foot box now costs around $20,000. Extreme weather has also contributed to this shortage. The UK's competition watchdog says it's considering whether to investigate allegations that the industry is profiting from the pandemic.
The Bank of England says it expects inflation to jump to 4% at the end of the year. For now, the central bank has decided to keep its stimulus at full speed, but it warns some modest tightening of monetary policy is likely over the next 2 years to keep inflation under control.
The US pharmaceutical giant Pfizer and its British distributor have been accused of overcharging the UK's National Health Service for epilepsy drugs. Regulators claim markups of more than 2,500% were applied to vital medication, pushing up the NHS's annual cost for the drugs from just under $3 million a year to almost $70 million.
Mike Ashley, the founder of retail chain Sports Direct, has announced he's stepping down as boss of the Fraser Group next year. Ashley's handing over power to his future son-in-law. The move would see Ashley step down as chief executive but remain on the board as an executive director.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, the Chinese city of Wuhan begins testing of its entire population of 11 million people after an increase in coronavirus cases.
The EU's digital COVID certificate, which offers the promise of unlocking hassle-free travel around Europe this summer.
In less than 2 weeks' time, the Czech border will also open to all EU and Serbian citizens. 4.4 million Hungarians received their first dose of COVID vaccine.
18 and over can receive a COVID-19 vaccination, but it does come with conditions.
Third wave will probably take longer to emerge. This vaccination centre is part of a massive effort to try and drive down the numbers of the new variant that was first identified in India.
On the agenda with me, Stephen Cole, we look up into space. We look down into data. We look at debt. We look at politics. We look at opioids, climate change. We look at all the issues that really matter around the world. But you matter too. We want to tell the stories you want to see and hear about. Make it your agenda.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Oh, no.
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
The agreement is signed. But what is the real deal now the UK has left the EU? For trade, for business, for the city, for ordinary people. Make sense of Brexit with CGTN.
Welcome back to Global Business Europe with Jamie Owen and Robin Dwyer. Our top stories. Wildfires continue to rage across southern Europe. Authorities order more evacuations from the Greek capital, Athens.
The EU says the Mediterranean will continue to be a wildfire hotspot as it records another scorching July, one of the continent's hottest.
And America's drive towards electric. President Biden says half of US vehicles will be net zero by 2030.
France is following the lead of countries like Israel, which has started offering coronavirus boosters to elderly people.
French President Emmanuel Macron says it's working on rolling out third COVID-19 vaccine shots to the elderly and vulnerable from September.
It will probably be necessary to have a third dose, not for everyone immediately, but at least for the most vulnerable and elderly. That is why we are preparing, as are other European countries, to give this third dose to the elderly and the most vulnerable people. And we will do so from the beginning of the school year.
Well, Hungary is already offering a third dose to its citizens, but it's up to doctors to decide who gets what and when. Penelope Lurch reports now from Budapest.
No matter what vaccine you've had, anyone is now technically eligible for a third shot in Hungary. It's up to Hungarians to ask for a booster, their doctor tasked with deciding which vaccine to give, a system that's been criticised by the medical community for not providing enough guidance. Dr. Balázs Rikeszi is part of a group of public health experts calling for booster vaccines to be prioritised for high-risk groups first, with particular concerns about people who haven't developed an immune response.
It's sort of wasting of resources rather than prioritising resources and focusing for those ones who are really needed this vaccination.
He and his colleagues have published a proposal to help doctors make the decisions. From next month, vaccination is mandatory for health workers. This is a population deeply divided over the question of inoculation. Hungary might be offering third doses, but only around 65% of the adult population has had a first dose of vaccine. Vaccination numbers have been stalling for months, with experts calling for more focus on those who are hesitant to have the jab.
No, I have not been vaccinated, and I'm not going to be. I'm just like, if I have to die, so be it.
I will of course take the third vaccine to make sure I am protected.
My wife is a pharmacist. She said she doesn't think we need a third vaccine yet, but vaccines are something that support and help, so there's no need to be afraid of them.
As a fourth wave looms closer, it's hoped vaccination rates can pick up before it hits. Penelope Lurch, CGTN, Budapest.
China says it will donate 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines within the year. The announcement by Chinese President Xi Jinping was made in the International Forum on COVID-19 Vaccine Cooperation. He also promised to donate $100 million to the COVAX Global Vaccine Distribution Scheme. Let's talk now to Professor Beate Kampmann, who is Director of the Vaccine Centre at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. She joins us from Banjul in Gambia. Thanks very much indeed for being with us today. So how much difference will these moves by China to donate vaccines and money make?
Well, it is a really welcome move because there is still huge inequity in the vaccine supply globally, with only about 3.5% of people being vaccinated, for example, in Africa, where I'm currently based, and overall low-income countries having less than 2% vaccine coverage. And we really need more vaccines donated, and we need dollars to populate the COVAX initiative as well. So a very welcome move indeed.
Meanwhile, we've had the WHO calling for a moratorium on booster jabs so that the rest of the world can catch up and get vaccinated. Would you support that strategy?
So there was a very clear message from Tedros on Wednesday around trying to achieve at least the target of 10% of the most vulnerable vaccinated in all countries by September, and not to give booster vaccines globally in countries where there is a surplus of vaccines. So I think the science around the need for booster vaccines is not yet completed. And while some countries feel that the most vulnerable in their communities should have a booster, I think we should really look at the data, and it will completely depend on the epidemiology in those countries as well. So I strongly support that we increase the coverage globally before we go for boosters.
Does it have to be a choice, though? Can't boosters potentially continue alongside further doses?
Of course, yes, but you know, there's only so much vaccine going around, and one thing does not exclude another. But countries really need to continue the international collaboration to make sure that the vaccines are available to those in countries who have not yet had the opportunity to be vaccinated, and where we still see death and you know, really erosion of healthcare systems who can't cope with new infections.
So how important is it for the global fight against coronavirus that no country is left behind?
It's a very important message to keep reminding ourselves. No country should be left behind. The goal of cutting transmission of the coronavirus is really quite a way off with the targets globally, but at least we should make sure that people don't die unnecessarily and that already very stretched healthcare systems are not completely overwhelmed. And the international efforts need to be continued. This isn't done, and we need to step up in vaccine delivery internationally, which is happening, but it's not yet sufficient.
So what are the main challenges for developing countries in trying to get their citizens vaccinated?
I think the supply situation isn't yet solved. The African Union has a very wonderful website which shows us where the vaccines have been administered. There are logistics challenges, there are financial challenges, there are challenges of manufacturing, of having enough product out on the market, and they're also, you know, challenging on the ground to give vaccines that are new to a program in a pandemic situation when there are already challenges in delivering life-saving childhood vaccines. So there's only so much people can do, and it is very much a question of all hands on deck, but it does need international support.
So what would you like to see richer countries doing to improve access to vaccines?
I think the pledges that have been made both by the G20, now also by China, they are hugely helpful, and the COVAX initiative is the cornerstone of delivering these vaccines. I think we need to have the commitment from companies also to donate and keep the prices achievable for low and middle income countries so that we can roll out. And ultimately, we need to upscale manufacturing globally, and that is a more long-term vision, because vaccine companies cannot be, you know, established overnight in countries that haven't produced vaccines before.
Professor Beate Kampmann, great to get your thoughts today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
The Chinese city of Wuhan is testing its entire population of 11 million people for coronavirus after 7 cases were detected on Monday. Officials have linked this strain to the highly contagious Delta variant. Chen Qian reports.
Mass testing began as early as Tuesday afternoon in several communities around Wuhan after officials announced a citywide campaign for all its 12 million residents.
The plan is to test 200,000 residents in 3 days. And we can see the open square is now divided into infrared temperature checking area, registration area, and a sampling area.
Our community only has 14 workers, and most of them are women. When we were assigned the task at 11:30 a.m. yesterday, about 200 volunteers from all walks of life came forward to help. They started arriving at 2:30. By 4:30, tents were set up, and testing began at 6 o'clock.
Our hospital sent 1,500 nurses for testing at 12 areas. Compared with the fight against the virus last year, I'm more at ease this time. The government reacted swiftly, and residents are more cooperative now. I queued for about an hour to get tested last year, but now it only takes less than 30 minutes. It's much more efficient.
2 rounds of testing have been completed at the community where a case was detected. Authorities say all test results have come back negative so far. And many Wuhan residents say they know well by now that early detection and isolation are the most effective solution. Chen Zijian for CGTN in Wuhan.
The pandemic is making heroes of many, and now the toy maker behind the iconic Barbie doll is celebrating some of the women who've led the response to COVID. Mattel has made a series of 6 pandemic hero Barbie dolls, commemorating the efforts of top female medics, health experts and scientists. To see them, go to europe.cgtn.com.
7 European countries have been moved on to the UK's so-called green list in the latest shake-up of COVID travel regulations. People returning to the UK from countries including Germany, Austria and Norway will no longer have to quarantine when they return.
Restrictions stay in place for 2 of the most popular destinations, France and Spain, while Mexico, where thousands of Britons are thought to be currently on holiday, is being moved to the red list. Well, the changes mean that overall 36 countries are now on the UK's travel green list, but many are on watch alert, meaning their status could change at any time.
It's a confusing period for Britons hoping to book a holiday. CGTN's Paul Barber has been talking to Paul Charles of the travel consultancy, the PC Agency.
There's progress here, and it's to be welcomed that some countries are opening up further, but it's still a complicated traffic light system. It doesn't go far enough in widening the list of green countries. There are many countries eligible to be green. And it doesn't address one of the key issues that consumers have, which is around the lack of notice before a country changes colour. So if I make a booking as a consumer, I want to make sure that I'm not going to be charged more if I have to change my booking at the last minute. And the government's not guaranteeing that they won't change a country at short notice.
Is today's news still good overall for the travel sector?
I think the news helps the travel sector because any opening of any country is a good thing. It enables more flights to operate and it gives consumers more choice again. But fundamentally, it's not enough. It's too slow a reopening, and it's not helping the travel sector recover fully during what is the peak August season. Travel firms and airlines need as much money as possible coming in during August so that they can survive the harder months of winter which lie ahead.
Which countries would you like to have seen added to the green list with no quarantines at all required?
We correctly predicted all of the green countries, the 7 that have gone on the list. But under that criteria for those 7, there should have been many more added. The likes of Poland, Canada, the Czech Republic, Hungary. These are countries which should have gone onto the green list and haven't. And so you wonder whether this is more of a political decision than a logical decision.
The opposition Labour Party says the system is still overly complicated for consumers. You'd agree with that?
It is a complicated system. It's not the simple system that the Prime Minister promised. And you only have to look at the USA, for example, to see how you can introduce a simple system. If I'm fully jabbed as a US citizen, I can travel almost anywhere as long as that country will let me in. And then I simply take a test before I come back to the US, and then I don't have to quarantine when I'm in the US. That is a simple system. That's what's working. It balances the health priorities with the economic needs, and that's what the UK should be doing.
What more could the government be doing to support the industry and consumers? And how much has domestic tourism in the UK offset the reduction in foreign holidays?
There's no doubt that the UK market will be doing very well because many more people are choosing to staycation. They're choosing to have holidays in the UK instead of spending their money abroad. But the travel sector to operate properly needs both outbound and inbound to be working effectively. And it's an industry that employs 1 in 10 people in the UK. It's the backbone of the economy globally, and it's worth billions of pounds, tens of billions of pounds to the UK economy. It feels like the government is keeping an arm lock on the UK travel sector with these tough restrictions and testing rules that still remain in place. One of the things that's holding consumers back from booking is the high cost of testing. Especially if you're a family of 4, you could be paying £2,000 or £3,000 to go to a country and come back again due to the rules in place, not only by the UK government, but other governments as well. We need testing to be internationally aligned. There needs to be a consistent approach from governments, say to have 1 test in and 1 test out. And it could be an antigen test rather than a PCR test, which is much more expensive.
The Belarus Olympic sprinter who refused orders to fly home early says she has not betrayed her country. Krystyna Szyman-Uskaya is now in Poland, where she's been given a humanitarian visa. Our correspondent Stuart Smith is following the story from Moscow. Stuart, what more did she have to say?
Well, she said that she never intended her statements, which were critical of the Belarusian Olympics Committee, to be interpreted as critical of the Belarusian government. But now she is in Poland. She has gone there with a humanitarian visa, but has not yet decided whether to apply for refugee status or indeed how long she'll stay there at all. But she is sure, she says, that she wants to continue her sporting career. She would love to join the Olympic Games for at least 2 more occasions, and Poland has said that it is willing to sponsor her sporting career if she chooses to accept their help. And she did say, though, that eventually she would like to see Belarus again.
I really hope that one day I can return to Belarus. I did not betray my homeland. I love it so much. I hope that one day I will return to my free Belarus.
Stuart, what's been the wider political impact of all of this?
Well, the International Olympic Committee is looking into what exactly happened between Timovskaya and Belarus, and is also looking into whether she is eligible to change the flag which she runs under. She says that might be something she would like, but at the same time that has a 3 to 4 year cool-down period where she wouldn't be able to represent the country that's hosting her. More broadly, in terms of political international reaction, it will add further weight to a recent United Nations Human Rights Council report, which found that Belarus is in an unprecedented situation in terms of scope and gravity of human rights violations, with thousands of protesters arrested for criticising the government and people in jail, not just for criticising the government, but protesting against the government and calling others to protest against the government.
And I wonder if we have any idea of the reaction in Belarus.
Well, the Belarusian government says that this is not at all what went down. They were merely asking her to come home due to mental and psychological problems. Now, she denies that there were any such problems, that she was medically fit and cleared by a doctor to go to the Games, so that is not the true reason they wanted to bring her back. But bear in mind that although she says the Belarusian Olympic Committee were not the targets of any political comment, it's the son of President Alexander Lukashenko who ultimately heads that Olympic Committee, which could be why the reaction has been so strong from Belarus.
Stuart, thanks for that. Good to see you. Stuart Smith there, our correspondent in Moscow.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, Iran's new hardline president is sworn in, vowing to end crippling Western sanctions.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there. To see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Mari, what would you say is a good question?
Stephen, I'd say it's one where there's always more than one answer.
The Answers Project is a new podcast series from CGTN Europe. With me, Stephen Cole.
And me, Mari Beveridge. In each episode, we'll take a complex question.
And with the help of some of the world's foremost experts, shine light on some of the answers. So join us for The Answers Project.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, welcome back to Global Business Europe. Iran's new president has been sworn into office promising to lift US sanctions and revive his country's economy. Senior cleric Ebrahim Raisi was elected in June, taking over from the moderate reformer Hassan Rouhani. Raisi is under personal sanctions from Washington over allegations of human rights abuses.
Hong Kong singer and activist Anthony Wong, who was arrested earlier this week, has had corruption charges against him dropped. Prosecutors agreed to settle the case with an 18-month good behaviour order. The city's anti-corruption watchdog had previously accused him of encouraging people to vote a certain way when he performed at a political rally.
Nigeria has seized a record amount of pangolin scales and claws, as well as elephant tusks, in a crackdown on wildlife trafficking. The haul, worth an estimated $54 million, was the result of a customs operation involving officials from Britain, the United States and Germany. 3 foreign nationals have been arrested. A 4th person is being pursued. Conservation groups say Nigeria has become a hub for criminal gangs sending pangolins to Asia.
British Border Force officials say a record 482 migrants crossed the English Channel on Wednesday. It comes as British authorities step up efforts to deter refugees from making the dangerous crossing through busy shipping lanes. Proposed legislation would make it a crime to enter the UK illegally, carrying a 4-year jail term.
Wildfires continue to rage in Turkey, where thousands of residents and tourists have been moved from their homes. 8 people have died in the blazes, which have destroyed thousands of hectares of forests. Meanwhile, firefighters have put out a blaze near the Kamerköy coal-fired power plant in the southwest of the country. Residents had to be rescued overnight by boat as the fire spread. Japan has expanded its emergency coronavirus measures to cover more than 70% of the population. 8 additional prefectures have been added to the state of emergency, bringing the total number to 13. Measures include a ban on alcohol in restaurants and refraining from unnecessary travel.
Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga says the highly contagious Delta strain has been spreading, but has denied the Olympics have caused a rise in infections. Tokyo hit a record 5,042 COVID-19 cases on Thursday. China has widened its lead once again on day 13 of the Tokyo Olympics, now with 34 gold medals under its belt. The United States remains in second place on 29. Host nation Japan is third with 22 golds. Australia is next, and the Russian Olympic Committee is tied in 5th position with Great Britain.
Well, John Matthews has the latest now from Tokyo.
It was a bittersweet day for Japan as home sport karate saw its first Olympic matches ever, but Japanese fighters just couldn't make it out of the elimination rounds in the kumite combat category. Now, Japan did take a single silver in the kata choreographed section. They'll have more chances in kumite on Friday as Japan fields 2 fighters in that category. Now, the event itself will not take place in Paris in 2024, meaning it only has this one shot to make an impact on the scene. Now, another hard loss for the host country on Thursday. China took Japan 3-0 in the women's table tennis team final as China retained its championship status 4 games in a row. Now, it was a 1-2 for China as well in the pool, a gold and silver from the 10-meter platform in women's diving. Dominant was 14-year-old Kwan Hong-chan as she went into her final dive only 1.2 points behind the bronze medalist who'd already finished her final dive. Now, Kwan had nearly 3 consecutive rounds of perfect 10s and was more than 40 points ahead of her compatriot in second. Now, it was a good day for the USA. The U.S. picked up 3 wrestling medals with another wrestler into the freestyle semifinals. It was a 1-2 in gold and silver in the men's shot put as well, and a silver in men's 100-meter hurdles. The men's basketball and women's beach volleyball teams also advanced to their respective finals, but with women's national football team on the U.S. side edging out Australia for only a bronze medal, it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow after a long run of victories and for what was certainly a gold medal in their sights. Now, Dutch rider Laureen Van Ressen was sent to the hospital and is being treated there after a high-speed crash on the Keideen cycling track. Keideen is a widely popular Japanese sprint cycling event and debuted in Sydney in 2000. Now, a very chaotic event like roller derby, these athletes race in tight clusters as they jockey for position. As they were racing, Van Ressen took down Team Great Britain's Katie Marchant as well, but she managed to get up and complete the race, although she wouldn't qualify. Marchant says she's battered and bruised, but will be back for Friday's individual sprint. John Matthews, CGTN, Tokyo.
Denmark's Victor Axelsen is still coming to terms with winning badminton gold after beating China's Chen Long in the men's singles final on Monday.
The 27-year-old broke down in tears after clinching the title against a player he calls a big role model. He talked to CGTN's Dan Williams about making his Olympic dream come true.
First of all, congratulations, badminton men's single Olympic champion. What does that mean for you today?
Thank you so much. Well, it means the world to me. Obviously, you know, winning the Olympics is a big dream of mine, and I think I can talk on most badminton players' behalf when I say that this is the biggest thing you can win. So I'm obviously all over, over the moon right now.
Talk about the emotions following the victory. It's almost like you couldn't quite believe what had just happened.
Well, you know, I don't think still I've realized, you know, how big this is. This is, a dream of mine coming true. Since I started playing badminton and when I watched my first Olympic Games, this has been the biggest dream of mine. So, you know, actually coming true here and winning the men's singles is, again, I can't describe how happy I am.
Tell me about that titanic battle in the final with China's Chen Long.
Well, you know, Chen Long and I, we have a history, obviously. We've played each other many times. I respect him a lot. He's a great athlete and a great person outside the court also. So to play against him in the final at the Olympics, I couldn't, imagine a better final for me. Obviously, winning was awesome. And again, Chen Long was gracious in defeat as well. So he's a big role model.
Obviously, the two of you afterwards, you spoke, you talked, embraced. Just talk about that. There's a lot of respect, isn't there, between the two of you?
There's a lot of respect, definitely, mutual respect. Again, we know each other from, the circuit, many games against each other. And, I asked Chen Long if he wanted to exchange shirts because, again, he's a big role model of mine. And to look at this the shirt of his, it will bring back a lot of good memories. And, to battling it out with the best players in the world is, a dream also, being on the badminton tour. So, yeah, I'm really happy once again.
What now for you going forward with Paris 2024 in mind?
Well, I think taking one day at a time right now. I have to enjoy this win. I have to take a little bit of time off, be together with my beautiful fiancée and my beautiful daughter and let this win sink in. And then I'm going to come back with all eyes on the next tournaments. And obviously the Paris Games is also a big dream of mine.
This week on Razor, a special report on the battle to save Australia's iconic little blue penguins from introduced predators and climate change by giving them their very own special breed of allies.
To have iconic species as your flagship to a particular conservation helps a lot. It's a quite unique attraction and it's quite incidental success.
The headlines again. Wildfires continue to rage across southern Europe. Authorities order more evacuations from the Greek capital, Athens.
Our other headlines: America's drive towards electric. President Biden says half of US vehicles will be net zero by the year 2030. And that's it for Global Business Europe. Thank you for watching. More on all of our stories at europe.cgtn.com, and do follow CGTN Europe on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.
We're on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV, YouTube and Dailymotion, CGTN.com and the CGTN app. Coming up next on CGTN, it's Africa Live. We'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same place. From all the team here in London, goodbye.
Goodbye.